Yeah, what I'd like to do is just jump right in, Shy, if that's okay. And I would love to learn more about you. Maybe let's do a quick intro first. Maybe tell us about who you are and what you do.
Hi everyone, my name's Shai, and I'm one of the co-founders of Young Black Psych, along with my partner Lauren. I guess my journey into psychology began from quite a really young age. I had an aunt who was a clinical psychologist, and growing up, that was a big influence in my life. Fast forward to sixth form, I remembered being on an open day to my sixth form university with all of my sort of high school friends, and there was a study in psychology, and it was this study called Loftus and Palmer. And if anyone knows about Loftus and Palmer, it's that study where it's like, eyewitnesses saw two cars collide, and one group is asked, "Did you see any broken glass when the cars smashed into each other?" And the other one is like, "Any broken glass when the cars bumped into each other?" And from that point, when I essentially learned that the group who heard that the cars smashed into each other for that they saw broken glass, that they recorded it, I thought, mad, isn't that crazy how mad our brains are? And I think for me at that point, it led me to think, you know what, like there's more to this whole being like a person thing. I'm really curious, kind of thing. So all through my sixth form, I had the intentions of going to uni, and I wanted to do psychology, and then going off to uni in Nottingham, and where I met yourself, Sam as well. That was
Yeah.
that was quite yeah. That's another story for another day.
Yes.
But but yeah, it was sick. So then obviously I went to university in Nottingham Trent, and did a joint honours psychology and criminology. But I really fell in love with psychology. And so during those 3 years, I had initially planned to graduate, and I was going to just work in Nottingham, and I was going to work in a bar, but also become an ABA tutor to work with children on the autistic spectrum. So ABA is essentially
Okay.
applied behavior analysis, which is
Right.
a way of sort of behavior, social and emotional working. Anyway, but I didn't end up going that way, because then I was fortunate that I got a job as an assistant psychologist working in East London. So
Right.
that was a really huge jump for me to say, wow, am I really going to move from this like really quiet, like cute, like nice town Nottingham into the big city of London, off a job
Hmm.
in the new year? I said to you before the call, I'm the kind of person who like says yes to a lot of things and then says no
Yeah.
later. My motto is like, say yes to everything until you can say no, which like is a double-edged sword at times, I know. But if I didn't give myself that jump, that opportunity, it wouldn't have led to where I am today. So that was quite nice, because then coming to London, I was worked as an AP assistant psychologist for 18 months. I gained a wealth of experience working with children and young people. So I worked in a nursery setting, I worked in primary schools, secondary schools, special education needs units in East London as well, all whilst working within a multidisciplinary team. So I was shadowing people like educational psychologists, clinical psychologists, speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, and feeling like a really big part of the team. And one of the craziest things I always tell people is that when you do undergraduate psychology, like you learn the theoretical side of things, but because it's so broad, you miss out on that really valuable clinical experience that could be given at that stage when you're fairly young. So I was grateful then to be able to go from an assistant psychologist, working privately in a private service, to getting a job in the NHS. My first job in the NHS was in a CAMS team. CAMS stands for Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. And I was able to work as a mental health worker. So in that role, essentially, I was kind of like a therapist in that I was seeing kids therapeutically, but I was at the very early stages of my learning how to, I guess, work within an organisation like the NHS, which was arguably quite complex coming to see in the first
There's a
time.
lot going on in the
There's
NHS
a
right
lot.
now,
There's a
isn't there?
lot.
I feel like it's definitely a lot more than I could I could speak on. I'm definitely not well versed on that at all. But yeah, it's a lot going on, and
Yeah.
giving you all the support I can, wishing you all the best, and it's tough times for everyone, I believe. But yeah,
Mm.
it's a
and
lot going
and it's
on
quite
that.
nice, because like now that I've been in the NHS now 3.5 years, since August 2019. So what's that? 2020,
Hmm.
2022, 23. Yeah. So essentially, yeah, just over 3.5 years, and I've gone from a band 5, entry level clinician to now a band 6 therapist, in the NHS, all alongside doing a master's part-time. Although technically it's funny because it's going to count as a diploma now, because it's just years as opposed to 3 years. But it doesn't make a difference, because then it just means that I'll start my PhD in September to become a child adolescent psychotherapist. Yeah. So that's like a quick run through of sort of my whole history, how I got to here. I'm sure we can delve back into it.
Yeah. No, let's dive into that a bit more, because I definitely undersold you by saying masters, considering that the PhD is what's coming up next. So sorry about that. I'm so happy that you did a way better job, obviously, of telling us your story, telling us how you got to where you are. One thing I think would be interesting for me to know, especially, and for our audience, was that switch from uni to working in the NHS, and then also, well, I guess, towards your PhD. It's really hard to simplify, I know, but if the first things that come to your mind, what were the key things that fixed that journey for you? Or was it a case that you didn't even know that this is the journey you were on, and you kind of just took the opportunities as they came? Like, paint that picture for us of how you got from uni to NHS and now working on a PhD, as well as you're still running your own business. Let's not forget that, because that's very important. And I'd love for you to talk about that more at the end as well.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. So, as I say, like, think about it. You think back to 2017, my experience at university. I lost a very close friend of mine growing up during my second year of university, and I noticed that my mental health took a dip alongside other factors that were going on at the time. But it basically meant that in 2017, I wasn't able to graduate with everybody else. I had to push my studies back 6 months and complete my exams in the fall. At that point, I found myself in the hospitality industry, and I really enjoyed it. I loved doing promotion work. I loved doing bar work. But I was curious about working with kids. I'm one of 4. I have 3 sisters, 2 older, 1 younger, and I've always been, very close to my youngest sister. She's like my best friend, but she's 23, kind of thing. But there was something about holding on to that sense of feeling like a child that. Coming out of university, and again, I think it went down to, one, being able to supervise people who were already doing the kind of work, because I was very much like, let me learn from all of you guys. Like, how does it, when I finish a session with you, can I ask you questions? What did you get up to? Like, when you did this, how did that work? Like, how did you know they were going to do this when it happened? I was just so question hungry, and I'm sure it was probably annoying for a lot of them who were already like so over it. But it was really nice because they all gave me the time and space to be able to think about these things. And, I think it's important to acknowledge, in terms of like sameness and difference, working in childcare is very much a female-led profession. And it's unfortunate because a lot of men like fathers do play a very important role in early child development. But unfortunately, in the UK, men only get sort of the 2 weeks paternity leave. It's there are patriarchal things that I could get into right now about, but ultimately, it's almost like
we could save that for another. We could deep dive into that, because I'm sure. Go on. We'll keep it a bit light for this one, but I think, no, don't get me wrong, I think it would be very beneficial for us to have a focus on that at some point. As a community evolve, we're focused on knowledge sharing. I love repeating this, but it's feeling a bit cringy now. Building portfolio, boosting skills, taking your brand to the next level, all that stuff. And we're focused, and I think almost every part of our lives plays a role in that, right? Every part of our experiences. So I think it's definitely worth bringing you back in the future and talking more about childcare and all these things, and things that a lot of people go through that I don't go through because I don't have a child, right? But it's things that other people go through, and it will be nice to be able to give our audience, our community, what they need from these sessions. So I'd love to definitely have you back and talk in depth. And I know I'm not qualified to talk about any of that, so I definitely need you back to talk about that stuff.
I think it's funny though, because you say you're not qualified, but I think you have enough lived experience to necessarily know, because you've had enough lived experience to know what either a maternal or paternal figure feels like, your own attachment relationships of the people who are in your life who are significant, and how you relate to each person. It's kind of like when we a way of thinking about it might be like if someone upsets you, let's say a person you meet in the street, or someone you work with upsets you, and
Hmm.
that person might remind you of someone else in your past who, and it's brought up a similar feeling of upset. Now,
Hmm.
there's levels to it in that one might be able to sit with that question and think, simply like, who does that person remind me of? Why was that conversation so triggering for me? Like,
Right.
what was going on for me that day?
Yeah.
So they're kind of questions that I find myself asking, the people I work with, the families I come across, the dads who I work with as well.
So if I could summarize it a bit, it's essentially like that journey into the Shy you are now, from Shy who was at uni, student having fun, going out. We all had our fun, all that stuff, right? Going from that to Shy now,
Ocean Wednesdays.
it's a case of, yeah. Yeah. People don't need to know Shy. But it's more of a case of, it seems that you had like a very detrimental, there was a moment, there was a heavy moment on you that kind of made you realize that I need to do something with myself. That was, sadly, it was losing a friend, but it made you realize that there's more to exploring life. And that's impressive, because there are people who are probably still dealing with the opposite side of that now, who had those moments and they spiraled in the other way around, and they're still finding their feet. And I want to come back onto that topic shortly. But to keep summarizing this, it's, you had that moment, you reflected, you pushed through the barriers with the support around you, with the mental health professionals that helped you. And then you realize that these were patterns in yourself. You realize that this is what I'm inspired to do, working with kids. And then you found the influences to support you on that journey. When you found the influences to support you on that journey, you realize that there's more hurdles to be faced in that journey, in terms of like, not sure if you fit in and all this stuff. And you work past that. And now you've kind of gone, okay, let me transfer what I do now into another content space, right? You created Young Black Psych, you created the WordFirst website as much as your mum didn't want you to. You made it anyway, and good on you for doing it. And I'm sure she loves you for it now.
Yeah.
And you've made that. And now when we're having this conversation, you've gone from, I want to work with children, to 3 different ways of targeting this same goal, in terms of, I'm assuming you also jumped into education whilst you were working in your NHS role, right? I'm assuming that's when you decided, okay, I need to upgrade that a bit more.
Yeah, so it was before that, actually. So when I was working as an assistant psychologist, I did a lot of CPD, which is, continued professional development. So there were applications like Teach, which is a treatment and education of autistic related communication, handicapped children. It's a really long thing. But I qualified in like the Solihull approach. I qualified in Teach program. And then a bit later on in 2018, I want to say 2018, 2019, I think I went to the Institute of Arts in Therapy and Education. So that was a sort of a therapeutic school college in Angel in London, where I did a therapeutic play course with a group of like other adults, and it was absolutely incredible, because, so I guess to go back even further, when I lost my friend at uni, I sought help in the first instance. And I remember the university gave me this really, it was this male therapist, but he came across very like strongly religious. And I remember, growing up as a young Catholic, young Christian Pentecostal man, who had lost a bit of his faith at that time, that was the last thing I needed to hear. So it deterred me from getting help. And I found myself, I deteriorated at that point. And it wasn't until people I was living with and people who were looking after me at that time were saying to me, you need to see someone. After a bit of time, I was then able to go back to the university, get another counsellor, and begin to make those like small steps and changes to be able to get to somewhere where I could then be able to take in the help. But it was so difficult. So now it's like, so going back to my course, my therapeutic play course, that placement was like, we were learning essentially how to work therapeutically with different models. So like sand tray therapy, clay therapy, arts and crafts like storytelling, using puppets, using paint, messy play. And this was all like, the craziest thing was, it was all experiential. So we had to be doing these things. And I'll never forget the day when I made like, we use this phrase in like psychodynamic theory, which is like the internal world, which represents like a person's internal emotional state. And when you do a piece of sand tray work, you essentially try and recreate your internal world in the sand tray, using little miniature figures, little animals, little gates, little like post boxes. And there's something about the sand is so coarse and it's got weight to it. And when you're building your
Yeah.
world, we had to then explain to our partners in the group like what was going on in our world.
Yeah.
Yo, like as an adult, it took me. So imagine like kids. I've had some
Yeah.
kids make some incredible sand tray worlds, just because they've just not had the words to tell me what's going on in their life. But the sand tray tells all.
That's
In some
amazing.
respects. But yeah.
So one thing, and I think I want to segue this in a way where we can answer some of the questions that were sent to us on our Instagrams and LinkedIn. And one of them was, how do you spot when a friend is burning out? Because you were telling me about how all your friends and family notice that you need to go get the help you need and you need to find the support networks. And I think this is a mixed question. Maybe you could talk from what you noticed that they saw in their point of view, as well as what you know in your profession for spotting these things. How can you know when someone's got too much going on and maybe needs to be told that, hey, you should find some help? And then I think what I'd love for that to continue on to is, how do you get them involved with that support if you can?
Okay. So I think in my case, some of the early signs of burnout, I think at the time, were things like withdrawing from activities that used to bring me a sense of joy. So if it was a case, people at uni knew that I was really into my Thai boxing, I was into my fitness, my gym. At times it was going out, it was just kind of being around people, and you would often see, like I said, I'd be withdrawing in myself. I'd be kind of staying more in my room. I would have unhealthy coping mechanisms, essentially. I'd be doing things to myself that wouldn't necessarily be helpful. I wouldn't be going into university. I'd be just feeling really flat, feeling really low. I think especially while self-care dipped, these aspects of self-neglect meant that I wasn't keeping myself, on top of things. People saw that. I think there was some concerns around whether or not I could keep myself safe at times because of some of the things that I was saying, the things I was thinking about, the way I was being in myself. And all those things can be really scary for a person to see, especially when it's someone who they really care about. And this is where, in my sort of NHS role, we think about things like care plans. So a care plan is what sort of comprises someone's care, and it will help someone think about, okay, well, what is the main problem? What's going well so far, and what would the person notice would be different? Like if we could, what would they like to work towards? And then in a care plan, we can think about, well, what would the people who are close to me be able to do to support me? Like, what would I notice? What could they do to help me feel like things are getting better? If you're a student and you're at college or university, you can think about, okay, well, what about the other supportive people in my life at college or school? What would I like them to be able to do for me? Or what would I like them to be doing less of? Or about the same? Could they already doing something which is quite helpful? And then asking yourself, everyone, I know that the people who care about me are doing something. People I go to school or college with are doing something. What can I do for myself? What are some of the things that maybe I could start doing? I often feel like, people who feel burnt out can often feel quite low in mood as well. And when you're low in mood, you're not necessarily less likely to do the things that you enjoy, and you're going to get less sense of achievement or enjoyment or closeness to others out of those things as well. There's a bit of a negative cycle you can find yourself in. And, working too hard, whether it's at work, whether it's sort of emotionally, you can feel burnt out in many different ways. I think a really, take my example as being a clinician in a CAMS team, right? A really good indication of what burnout might look like for someone like me might be having less empathy for patients. So if a patient comes into a session and starts telling me things, and my internal response is, oh, not again. I have to do this now for them. I've lost that sense of empathy. I'm probably feeling a little bit burnt out myself. And this is where things like really good supervision can come in helpful. Having your own therapy as well, a space that's not your partner, not your friend, not your parents, someone who's objectively helping to work with you to create a space for you to think and feel the things that you're going through, which I think can be really helpful. If I was someone who noticed that someone I cared about was experiencing burnout, and again, burnout looks different in lots of people, it's important people do their research on that. I would, I think one of the worst things, not necessarily one of the worst things, but I think one of the often misconcepted things people think they should do is suddenly throw lots of different suggestions at the person thought they should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, like, you should slow down, you should do this, or you should go on holiday, or you should do that. It's like, no, like, first things first, acknowledge that the person you're speaking to is burnt out. Create the space just to recognize that that's happening, and ask yourself, you know, if I was feeling burnt out, what would I want in this moment as well? Maybe it would just be someone to just maybe actually just recognize that I'm feeling burnt out and allow the space for me to then tell them what I'm burnt out about, as opposed to them being like, do this and do that and do this and do that kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Okay. No, that makes complete sense. And admittedly, I'm listening to you and I'm spotting moments where even myself, I'd think, I really just couldn't care less right now. And I feel like these are also the same days where I've slept 3 hours because I was doing something crazy in the morning. I was working really late at night, hyper focusing like I always do. And I just feel like I have passion in this, but this very moment, I don't. I don't want to talk about this. Or I'm also seeing the other side where I've maybe let people down because I'm quite a solution-driven person. If I hear a problem, I have to fix it. And I don't know why. It's just in my head. It's the same behavior I apply to everything I do. I have to fix every problem I see. So when someone comes to me with an issue, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, this is how I would fix it. This is what you could do. Talk to this person. And what I'm hearing from you is that maybe I should take a back seat a little bit. Maybe I should leave that room of like, tell me what's in your mind. Let's relax and talk about it. Is that what you're imparting there? Of like, if someone's kind of opening up, just let them open up. And okay, well, I'll take note of that for sure. And I apologize to all my friends and family who I've probably talked over because they've got issues.
And I think there's something really powerful about acknowledging how the other person is feeling, and then allowing the space to just fill with silence and give the person that space to talk. Because the chances are, you know, I often have a little bit of a habit where in my head, if I say something, I'll count to 10 in my head, and I'll often count fairly slowly. To say to myself, you know, okay, I'm going to give this person 10 seconds to reply. If they haven't replied, then I might just say something else and then kind of wait again to see, because that person might be feeling so burnt out, they can't process what I'm saying. And all my best efforts to kind of be like, oh, like, I really hope you're okay, and should we go for a walk, or should we go do this, or what do you want to do? Do you want to order in, or do you want to go this way? And then suddenly that person's like, this is no longer a safe space. This is no longer a helpful space. I just feel even more emotionally charged and burnt out and unheard and unlistened to as well.
With the resources you've had and the information you've got, how are you as a person utilizing that to cope with burnout or avoid getting burnout? Like, how are you coping essentially? How are you dealing with all of this? I think is the main question I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah, this is a really good question.
Yeah.
I get this a lot as well. And I always think it's really funny when people say to me like, God, I can't believe you do all this stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, right, me neither. It's really weird. My motto is very much take it one day at a time. I have a lot of non-negotiables in place that I set for myself, and my non-negotiables typically tend to be around my physical health. You know, so for example, getting my 6 hours of sleep, hitting 10,000 steps a day, hitting my water target, taking my multivitamins, you know, meal prepping in the week, twice a week where I can. So I also like to just try and stay organized. So, you know, I'm very much a digital person. I'm not much of a paper notes kind of guy anymore. That was a couple of years back after reading a book called Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. Hands down, one of the best resources I've ever invested in. Essentially, you know, either just to kind of, I guess, give a bit of a sort of a brief of the book is that the idea is, you know, our first brain, which is the brain in our head, it was not designed to be able to hold on to lots of different information. It's simply just used for, you know, processing immediate information, and then it's often a lot more helpful for us to have a second brain that's digital we can store this information and refer back to. So my weapon of choice was the Apple Notes app to begin with, where what I would essentially do would be I would take information from my environment. Let's say it was a recipe, or it was like something that a lecturer said or a seminar leader said this and it was really interesting, and I add it to my Apple Notes app. I would then sort of organize my information based on what that was for. And then what I would do is I would then build a second brain in an app called Notion. Everything is just organized. So everything is related to a topic of mine. So I actually have my like sort of system here that I'll tell you. It's like it's broken down to us. So the book Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. It introduces this
Mm-hmm.
idea called the POWER method, and you organize your information based on the POWER acronym. So it goes projects, area of responsibility, resources, and archives. So for me, for example, all the projects that I'm involved in would go in the projects folder, and that looks like my clinical library, everything Young Black Psych related, video editing and so forth, or even university. Things like my areas of responsibility would be things like my finance, stuff on relationships, my personal training stuff, my own therapy notes. And my resources would be something like, again, like it might be like sort of like PD. So in my resources section, I might have things like like my therapeutic toolkit. So any interesting PDFs I found online for working with children or families and sessions, they'd be organized in there. And then, of course, we've got the last section, which is archive. Now, if you ask anyone to open their notes up on their phone, the chances are it's an absolute mess. There's no organization for it at all. And often it's so frustrating when you know you wrote something down, but you just don't know where it is. And often a lot of the stuff in our notes app, because it's often people's first person brain, you know, kind of taken from our first person brain as well, what tends to happen is that information just kind of gets lost in notes. So the archive function of POWER helps you stay on top of that. So if a note is no longer serving you or serving a purpose, it gets stored in the archive folder. So then you can maybe go back to it later on. So in my instance, I have a lot of, just as an example, I tend to scan my receipts and sort of, as opposed to me keeping like a drawer full of receipts, when I get a receipt, I take a picture of it and scan it in the notes app. Then that gets sorted in the archive app. I no longer need it anymore. But just in case I need to go back into a shop and return something, or I'm thinking, oh, where's that receipt gone? It's all just there, and I haven't got to think about it.
So it's go on, sorry.
Yeah, so it's those hacks that I tend to try and put in place for myself that in the long term have meant that I've been able to sustain doing something like this. So again, especially with like using Notion as like a sort of using Apple Notes as like a first point of call to take information, and then Notion to organize that information and store it. It's meant that I've been able to build Young Black Psych, been able to build my university sort of modules and like reading lists all in there as well, and just keep everything organized. But also, again, like having my non-negotiables, because I think at the end of the day, like I say this to families at work as well, physical health trumps mental health. Like in the first instance, you know, if you're physically unwell, like no amount of like, you know, therapy in some respects is going to help until we can get to the issue of physical health. And I think often, like, you know, people tend to forget and they neglect their physical health. So my non-negotiables, starting physically, mean that it sets my foundation to be able to do all the other things as well. And I think what really helps with that is accountability. So I've had a personal trainer now for the last 18 months. And that's been my sort of weekly commitment to myself, that I check in with someone every week. And it's never always perfect by any means. But it's the reality of like, you know, actually I did all this week, you know, and I haven't like, you know, I haven't forgotten to eat, and I haven't, you know, forgotten that I needed to get at least 6 hours sleep and drink lots of water and take multivitamins and medications and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think accountability and having a good support system around you, as well as things like in my personal case, like not keeping paper notes, but that I could just do so much. Like I have a paper notebook, don't get me wrong, for like sessions. But like then it's like click, and then it's gone.
And then it's just gone.
Straight gone.
So it sounds like it is. I feel like some people have a view on the digital world being a bit too much. And I feel like in many ways you found a way to turn the digital world into a tool that helps you in the physical one, in the real world. And that's something I wanted to segue slightly more onto in terms of social media and in terms of looking at everyone else who is quote unquote shining and how that has an impact on you and the different things you're doing. Because how that works on me is I love it when I see my friends succeeding. I love seeing people doing well, because it makes me feel like in some way, shape or form, I'm in the right position. I'm in the right circles to see people doing well.
Mm.
As well as if I'm close to that person, I'd like to think that me being a friend to them isn't a negative impact on their success in some way. They're either benefiting or staying neutral with my involvement in their life, and all that person can do is shine out. I'm not holding them back. It motivates me to try harder and do more, which can be seen as a good thing. It is one of my main sources of burnout, seeing everyone smashing it, and I'm just like, okay, I've got to do it. I've got to get up early. I've got to do all of this. And then I'm not getting the same return as they are because what they're showing is all these successes on socials.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you think too much of a digital experience could have a negative impact on your burnout? Being exposed to all this information and what everyone else is doing, do you think that has an impact, well, I guess, on your burnout? Do you think there's a connection there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know what the funny thing is, because take the idea, for example, of someone you're really close to and you have a lot of love and admiration for, and you see them doing well online. You want to be happy for them, and you want to be excited for them and wish them well. But at the same time, you're met with feelings of envy and jealousy and rivalry. Very infantile, very powerful feelings. They manifest themselves in ways of sometimes, not being able to show up for that person, not sharing that post or not reaching out as much as you would have, because that's got in the way of that. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times people think that they have to either just feel really happy with that person or just feel really annoyed at that person for their success, as opposed to being able to create the space to recognize that both feelings can be present and we can work with both feelings. You can share their work and you can use it to motivate yourself, but you can also remind yourself and bring that self-compassion in when you haven't been able to work 6 hours that day because you've had a child to look after, or you've had to do the school run, or you've had to do your laundry that day, or attend to other things in your life that are just as important as in the project you're working on. Right. I think all those things are really important, and I think comparison is the thief of joy. I often say to people, well, at least in my experience, because sometimes no matter how well I'm doing, no matter how much accolades and I've got, and people tell me that I deserve something, as soon as I see someone else who has a higher following than me, or gets more engagement, or seems to have much more of not a simpler message, but a more straightforward message around mental health that I do, because my training is a little bit different, or my therapeutic modality is different to theirs, it makes me question. It can make me question whether I'm good enough or whether I'm valuable enough to other people, because I'm not giving them sort of like snappy, really like memorable. That's it. Really memorable stuff, memorable things. Which can be really hard. Take my theoretical background. So I started in the NHS. I started as an assistant psychologist, and the play therapy training I did was very much person-centered / psychodynamic, which is a theoretical model of working with people. Coming to the NHS, I had basic understanding of this stuff, but the service was very much more CBT based, cognitive behavioral therapy, working with your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors and the rest of it kind of stuff. But for me, it felt too revolving door almost. I was seeing these kids for 6 sessions, on you go, here's some resources to look at, and then I'll see you in 6 months when you re-refer. It's kind of like, what are we doing? So I was a little bit like, and I felt like I needed something something that resonated a bit more with me. And that's where I came across the training that I'm currently on. So my initial plan back in 2019 was I was going to go to UCL and do a master's in child development. I got into UCL and I got into Kingston in London to go to both those unis, because they were 1 year, but neither course had a clinical placement. And I was like, I can't just do a year of theory, because if I come out of it, psychology in the UK, you have to get to at least doctoral level, unless you're a health psychologist, to be able to call yourself a psychologist. Like, you're about health or organizational. So I knew I was going to have to do a PhD at some point, but because I got a 2-2 undergraduate, I was limited in where I could go, or at least that's what I thought I was. That's what I was led to believe. And then especially like employers don't really. I mean, some employers care, some people don't really care.
Yeah.
Because it's all the postgraduate experience you get. What are you like in a room with people? How can you keep people safe? How can you do this? How can you do that?
Are you essentially saying that in respect to seeing everyone else doing well on Instagram and everything, and you're kind of just saying that the journey is different for everyone, and like you see it makes you want to do the work. You do the work and you realize that, okay, it's a different journey for all of us. For example, you're trying to become a psychotherapist, right? And you've jumped on that journey, you realize that it's maybe a little bit harder than expected because of all these previous barriers you had, but you're finding workarounds. You've been motivated in that respect. Is that kind of where the world's pushing you in terms of you're seeing everyone else succeeding and this is just your path of doing it?
I think it partly motivates me seeing people online. But I think it's more intrinsic as opposed to extrinsic.
Okay.
I think it's definitely shifted in the last, at least the last year, because now a big part of my training is going back to being able to feel like, what is it like being a patient in therapy? What does that feel like? And what do you notice? And how can you use that to inform your work? Which is why one of the prerequisites of my course in September will be being in therapy, 4 days a week.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's very different to some sort of traditional training. But when I think back to when I sit in the waiting room and I'm waiting for a session to start, what that feels like, what's going through my mind, it gives me much more empathy.
I did want to go back to, if you recognize that you're having a bad relationship with digital tech, although digital tech can give you a positive experience and help you manage things a bit better, like you were saying with your Notions and your archives. If you notice that you're having a bad experience, do you have any tips or things you've been through that have helped you digest that? And I know you went over it kind of, but if you could summarize that for us, do you have any main key points of how you reflect on that and how you kind of coach yourself back into a positive mindset about what you're seeing and what you're digesting online?
Yeah, and I think so. I think it starts with maintaining healthy boundaries. It's clear. It's essential to set clear boundaries between personal and professional life.
Right.
I think it's crucial to try and maintain healthy boundaries to avoid that overwork and maintain that healthy life-work balance. If you're someone who uses social media, especially, I often tell people to, again, because I work with children, I think the advice still applies to adults as well. I'll say this, we have to try and remember what our phones were introduced for in the first place. If what was the core function of this thing, and realistically, set boundaries with it, because at the end of the day, it's a relationship. You're in a relationship with our phones, and that's not necessarily a romantic or platonic. It's the aspect of how we relate to this device that we keep on our person at all times. And it's about protecting yourself with what you see. So, for example, if you open up your Explore page and you begin to notice posts that are quite sensitive and quite, make you ruminate and doom scroll, begin to select those posts and choose to hide them, or see less of this. Because then what you're doing is you're using the algorithm that's been designed to feed you, essentially, but cleaning it up. You're making it more tailored around what's going to be good for you in the future. It can be unfollowing accounts in some respect. It can be not necessarily unfollowing or muting accounts that make you feel quite, again, like you find yourself comparing quite often. So muting those accounts, setting again non-negotiables. Not using your phone for the first hour when you wake up and the last hour before bed, and having yourself in an activity that you enjoy. It's something separate to that. Self-care is a really funny, I guess, kind of like like phrase people use. I think self-care is different for everyone, but I think, simply put, taking time for yourself, keeping physically active, getting enough sleep, eating healthily, and doing activities that bring you a sense of joy, a sense of achievement, a sense of closeness to other people. I think all those things can help prevent burnout.
Okay. Love that. Absolutely love that. And one thing I need you to tell me, because maybe I'm really showing how little I use some of the tech out there, but doom scrolling, what's that? What's doom scrolling?
So doom scrolling,
is this a common term I've not heard of before? Just make it up.
No, so basically, I think doom scrolling looks like this. So if you've ever been doing a task and let's say you've come to the end of a particular part of the task, and you've exhaled and you've picked your phone up and you've opened Instagram or Twitter, and you find yourself, you're not actually watching the content, you're kind of just sort of just flicking through it. And that's probably been going on for at least 30 seconds at that point, where you're just kind of mindlessly like looking for the next thing that gives you that hit of dopamine to watch and kind of sit and watch. I think for me that's doom scrolling. And often, if you, in some terms, if you imagine if someone looking on the outside in saw you hunched over scrolling your phone and physically pulled you back from the device, you would probably it'd probably shock you quite a bit. But the reality of it is because what can happen is we can get so sucked into our phones and doom scroll, we end up overexposing ourselves to lots of content that can trigger our brains in lots of different ways. And then our unconscious is then left with all that stuff to then process when we're sleeping. And this is what can contribute to things like poor sleep, things like difficulties in relationships. It's like, again, being mindful of the content you're consuming when you are doom scrolling. Because if you have non-negotiables and you try and have healthier boundaries with social media in place, then I genuinely believe that your usage becomes more intentional. So, for example, I'm going on the app because I'm going to check for the next 15 minutes who's posted at my friendship group and how can I support their businesses. I'm going to go on in the evening and I'm going to post what I had for dinner or whatever. I'm going to come back off. It's like that. Yeah, like setting intentional time to go on those kind of apps, especially if you feel like you're someone who spends a lot of time on there, and again you're negatively comparing yourself and you're ruminating, and it's not bringing you a sense of joy. It's not making you feel close to other people. It's not making you feel like you've achieved anything. It's just adding to that sense of feeling low and feeling self-critical about yourself.
Fair enough. One thing I think, and I really appreciate how open you are about this, and what it's bringing to mind right now is not everyone's comfortable being this open about their well-being, about these kind of situations. And I get the sense that when we go all the way back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of your friends and family noticing something about you and picking up certain things that, hey, we need to work on this a little bit. Did you think you would have benefited from being more open about your situation if you could? Do you think you would have actually got a quicker result out of the situation you were in if you were a bit more open?
I think it's a good question, because I wonder if it is a case of being just more open, because again, I don't the reality of it is, because I'm a big believer that, adolescence, I feel like adolescence kind of like it's up to 25, to be honest.
Yeah. We're not growing up.
How would it, as supportive and as well wished the people around me who were around me at uni at the time, had I been as open, they would have felt possibly overwhelmed and not necessarily kind of know what to do with that information. So I think it's about recognizing people's limitations realistically. Yes, it can be really helpful to have a space to think about things, and it doesn't have to be someone you have to tell someone like everything all at once. It could be starting with just kind of one thing, about even just starting with how you feel, and then gradually creating the space to meet every so often, or setting something up where, because I know that people don't reply to messages like every day to people these days. It's like I'm the kind of the same. Like I'll get a message from someone and there's no malicious intent behind it. I haven't replied. I've just got so much on. I don't have the space to sit and talk. But one thing I'm trying to get into do with people is sending people really long voice notes, because there's something to listen to. And I feel like there's something about hearing your friend's voice, which can be quite comforting when you're not physically together anymore. So I think it's trying, if you're someone who feels like they're not someone who finds it easy to talk about how they're feeling, I am a big believer in that there is support out there, and the support starts with someone identifying the people that you trust. If you were to draw a circle, a piece of paper, and put yourself in the middle of that circle, and then draw 3 circles around that, each circle being a bit bigger than the last, ask yourself, who would you put in those circles? The people you'd put closest to in those circles, the people who you're closest, and then the one outside of that, people you're less close to, the one even outside of that, people who you're but you're not that close to. That's a good place to start. Let those people know who are in that circle. And then what you can do is then begin to try and create spaces with those people to talk about how you're feeling. And then those
Okay.
people would hopefully be able to then either signpost you for some support, be it counseling, be it an activity and a hobby. Because again, like, not everyone needs therapy. People just need hobbies and interests and things that bring them a sense of achievement, joy, and closeness to other people. I'm a huge believer in that, the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Not everybody needs therapy. Not everybody is able to use therapy when it's given to them. I'm a big believer in that children shouldn't be forced in therapy, because then what does that say when they're adults? What if when they really need it then they come back to it, but they've had a bad experience of it?
How do you create room for people around you to cope with your new schedule or approach to life? Because I assume that there's people that have got used to the older version of you and they're really comfortable with that. Let's go for a drink, and you're the guy who go for a drink. But now maybe you become the person that isn't going out for drinks as much and everything. How do you deal with that change? Well, how do you, I guess, support other people in that change with your life? Because when you watch a lot of videos, a lot of people will be quite aggressive in saying, "Oh, ditch them. They're not good for you." But I mean, you can't do that to your mum. You can't do that to your girlfriend, your brother. Like, but these might be people that are more comfortable with the older version of you and might have to adjust with you. So how have you handled that? How have you handled that change with people and, guide them into your new lifestyle and how they should communicate with you? Maybe send you voice notes instead of text, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm still learning, to be honest. I feel like I'm still kind of figuring it out. I mean, let's say, take Lauren, for example, who's my girlfriend, of going almost 5 years now in August. We have shared calendars.
Congrats.
We have shared iCloud calendars. So she knows I have a calendar for my gym, my uni, my therapy sessions, my work, and she works full time as well and has her own commitment. So I think being able to see each other's calendars, and in our case, schedule a regular date night, I think that makes a significant difference, because we know we're on the same page, that time is allocated for us. And the reality of it is right now we're both busy. I think it's a bit harder it has been a little bit harder with friends. I have been that friend who unfortunately doesn't get to go out for a drink, purely because I'm broke. But I'm also like very busy with everything else I'm doing. That has then meant that there have been some friendships that I've unfortunately either lost or become less close to, or you could say those people have gone into the outer circles of my diagram, and the people who are my immediate environment, like my partner, my parents, my sisters, some of my friends, still remain in those smaller in the closer circles. And until I'm able to have a bit of a transparent conversation with them and help them manage their expectations, because again, it's like, in relationships, they can't just be all give and all take. There has to be some level of transparency and being realistic with people. As you get older, when you're a kid and you're in year 6 or year 11, all your best mates are in your class. You can see everyone. But when you're an adult, it's a lot harder. You've got other commitments and responsibilities, and you're not going to be able to do everything. But building systems that mean that you can build on those systems and kind of like do the things you want to do. I think that's where it all starts. But again, like, self-compassion is a huge thing, because you're out here doing the most, trying to just live.
Gotta look after yourself.
Yeah.
Fair enough. No, I appreciate that advice. I'm definitely gonna take it on board for myself. I'm not going to lie, the worst feature for me is, the preview screen for messages. If someone messages me and I'm really busy, I'm like focusing on multiple things, you send me a message, and even if sometimes it's like been some like important things that I do need to get back to people, and I've apologized because I've forgotten about it. But when I read that preview of the message and I open it up and read the whole message, in my head that job is done. Like I've understood it. It's almost like I've heard you. Okay, cool. I'll get back to you. But then I'll switch context and I'll forget about it. But then that means I never go back to that message. So if you look at my WhatsApp, for example, I've got like 900 plus notifications still waiting for me to come back to it. I've gone past the maximum number my phone would show me, let's put it that way, of notifications. And it's got to a point where like I'm having to tell my friends, if I don't reply to you that day, I'm not replying to this message. And that's definitely something I need to work on. So that voice note tip would help. I've just realized saying that out loud is going to turn into like 900 plus voice notes. I don't want that either.
I think what's nice about that, though, is that I think there's something a lot more containing and holding for someone else on the other end of that message, who knows that you've heard their message, you've responded, you said to them, and and you let them know in the voice note that unfortunately I won't be able to reply to you quite soon in the future, but I hope if you send me a voice note back, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to really appreciate it, and I hope we can continue something like this going forward, because there's nothing worse than sending someone like 6-7 messages, and then like
and
you said,
just
you've read it, you've answered it in your head, and then you'd be like, I don't have time to sit and do this conversation now. But send you a 4-minute voice note that you can now listen to on times 1.5 or 2 speed. Sorted.
Yeah, I'm hoping you've got a positive takeaway from this, and I'm hoping maybe you yourself have benefited from speaking out loud about what you do. And do you feel like even from this conversation, you feel like it's helped you like reflect a bit more on what you do and opened up? It's like the best way to do things is to teach someone, right?
I think so. Yeah. Because again, it's like there are a lot of these things that as I'm saying them out loud, I'm asking myself, did I, my non-negotiables each day, for example, like, I know that there are some days in the week where I haven't done those non-negotiables because they've slipped through the net, but it's about coming back the day after and getting back on track. There's that, I always think to myself that there's a Sunday every week. So there's an opportunity to start again the next week.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's a really good way of seeing it. That's a really good way of seeing it.
Like,
I like that.
Sunday. Let's go. We got to go again. Level 2.
I really like that. I really like how you put that. That's brilliant. All right, cool. So tell us, I guess this is your chance to, promote yourself, as you are a premium employer on our platform, and we thank you for that. So I think this is a great time to promote yourself. Tell us all about Young Black Psych. Where can people find you? I'll put some links in the description later. But yeah, where can people find you? Yeah. And tell us maybe if you've got some new stuff coming out.
Yeah, so at the moment, let's say I'm one of the co-founders of Young Black Psych, which is a specialist sort of social enterprise specializing in creating easy-to-use mental health resources and workshops for children from Black, Asian, dual heritage backgrounds, so children and young people and their families. At the moment, we've got our A to Z coping strategy cards on our website, which is www.youngblackpsych.com. We're also on YouTube, we're on TikTok, and we also work quite closely with Redbridge Council. We were part of their Redbridge Race and Equality Awareness Scheme, which is really fun. Again, just sort of spreading the message around Black mental health in the Redbridge area. We also, and at the moment, in this very moment, we have a bit of a pop-up in Spitalfields, which is in central London, in Liverpool Street. So if you go into the Spitalfields market and you go to the store in Spitalfields, you will see the Young Black Psych board, which we've taken over outside the shop to sort of raise awareness again, and you can get involved. But we very much are looking to do sort of workshops with schools. So come in, and take over an hour at 90 minutes and get the kids involved and do activities. Because I always think, mental health support shouldn't necessarily be only accessible at the point in which you come into a mental health service. There has to be more push to get this kind of information into places like schools and places like community centres, so you can do that early intervention work. Because even just having the language to be able to talk about what you're going through at a young age means that there's that level of emotional IQ. If you can foster that, then you can. I think it makes then accessing support in the future, I think, more likely and less unfamiliar, because you've demystified it. So that's what I'm really kind of looking forward to, is just kind of connecting with more schools, more organizations, more people who look like myself, and also, more students. Because again, I'm mindful that child and adolescent psychotherapy, I think historically, as well as like other professions, has been historically white, male, female dominated. And people might see people like me on the course and think, rah, like, I look like him. What the heck? Like, I want to do that. So I encourage all A-level students, university students to sort of reach out to me. If they've got questions and I can answer the questions, I'd love to help. If I can signpost you to someone that I know who might be able to answer the question, I can do that as well. But I would to think back, when I was starting out, if I wasn't that person asking those questions and learning and being given the time, people who took it as like, I do this anyway, I wouldn't be where I am today. So yeah, man. Holla.
Appreciate that. Amazing. Thank you so much, Shai, for joining us on the call today. One thing I know my team will be so upset if I don't mention is the discounts we're running. So this isn't our usual PowerPoint. I can't bring the QR code on the screen, so that's fine. If you look in the descriptions of our YouTube video, as well as all our members should have got an email with the offers in there. This our Skillshare discount has increased from 30% off your annual membership to 40% off your annual membership, which is great. I'm very proud of ourselves here. That's going to last for a week, so grab it now if you can. On top of that, we are doing some really cool stuff in the background that Shai actually already knows about, and it might allude to why I was very keen on learning more about your digital experience, and that's we're creating an app called Hub. Let's open up Hub. And I think actually let's take this chance to look at your website as well whilst we're here, if that's okay with you. Yeah. Taking a look at what Hub is. Hub is our new content platform where we're going to have specialists like Shai creating blog posts and in the future creating video posts as well. It's a restricted content platform made for our users to consume healthy, positive well-being knowledge from specialists and experts in their field. And the beauty of all of that is it's taking all of the not so comfortable parts of social media out of the way and making it focused on well-being. We are giving you content that you can wake up to, that you can see in the morning and think, yeah, okay, I'm going to have a good day today. I've learned something. Rather than opening up and, what was that you said, Shai? Doom scrolling?
Doom scrolling.
We're trying our best to help people against that, I guess. So, yeah. Have a look at Hub. Currently, we're building our waiting list, so sign up. And we'll send you a link via email as soon as Hub is ready. We'll probably make it a bit more fun. Maybe loop in some giveaways, maybe not. You won't find out until you join the waiting list. But there's always something good on the other side of our links, I promise you that. So yeah, see you there. See you on Hub. We'll be launching later this year and we're very, very excited about it. So check out the website and let us know what you think. Let us know if there's something we can improve about it, something we can do better. We're always listening out for feedback. But before we go, Shai, let's talk about your website. So here it is, youngblackpsych.com. Are there any opportunities? Are you looking for someone to support you in your business or what you're working on right now?
So I'm very much because the team is very small. It's just me, myself.
Yeah,
me, myself, me, Lauren, and my little sister Maya. I am hoping to look for a kind of like virtual assistant at some point to help with the day-to-day stuff, as well as workshop facilitators for people who have an interest in mental health, for people who have a psychology background, maybe even sort of like students and that who are interested, but also professionals as well. I'd also like to be able to I think at some point, I think if when the right person comes along, they can join the team and to help us build and to bring ideas how we can kind of expand the business as well. I think that'd be really exciting.
Okay, and how could they reach you? Have you got a LinkedIn? I can maybe add in the description or add to the emails later. Or
sure.
Is it a case of just going through the contact form on your website? How would they reach you if they're interested in supporting you?
Hit me up on, I can say hit on Twitter. It's probably actually the easiest way. So Twitter is at Young Black Psych, but it's BLCK Psych in there. Or you can reach me on LinkedIn, which is Shai Bundy. Or I say like via the Instagram DM portal or on Young Black Psych or via email at hello@youngblackpsych.com.
Oh, sorry, go on. Say the email again.
hello@youngblackpsych.com.
Awesome. You are also in Evolve as a premium employer and you have a job post live so people can message you directly on Discord. Head to evolve.anxiousextrovert.co.uk, sign up, and you'll be able to join our Discord and speak to our members like Shai and ask him more details in that. In our Discord, you can also create your own voice channels. So I guess it's not a case of Shai, what's your number? It's a case of Shai, join this call I've set up in Discord, right?
Yeah.
And people can get to know you there as well. So yeah, we're going to leave it at that. And to benefit our Discord members for the last few minutes, Shai, I guess you can head over there because our Discord members, some of them pay for the benefit of being able to talk to our guests afterwards, and you can give them all the benefits that they're missing out on. So we'll do that now. Have a great day. I'll catch you on Discord once I'm done wrapping up with our YouTube
Thanks for having me,
community. Thank you for being here, buddy.
See you later.
Bye-bye. See you. Hey, so that was a wonderful session, in my opinion. Absolutely amazing. I would say I learnt so much from Shy in that call. There's so much more to learn. So yeah, I hope you benefited. If you have more questions, please let us know. Please let us know how we can support you. Please join the Discord community, talk to us. Let's work together on helping each other grow, improving our portfolio, boosting our skills, and taking our personal brands to the next level. Until the next time I see you all, have an amazing weekend, and I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.